Yeah, apparently. Oh, yeah, that's why I said it nice and. No, I want to. I want to hear it.
So.
It should.
Does not appear that we're going on YouTube, are we?
We should be broadcasting on YouTube. I don't know if we can view what we're broadcasting on YouTube.
I don't want to view it, I just want to make sure.
That's new. This popped up that it said, you know, be aware that you're streaming, et cetera, et cetera.
It's like we have somebody waiting.
Yeah, so we're live.
Okay, I'll call to order this meeting of the Legislative Committee for the City of Salem for February 2nd, 2024. President Arhoy.
Stapleton. Nishioka.
And apparently our other counselors couldn't make it. We haven't heard from them. They're not here. It's time to go. We have a quorum. All right. On to updates and information sharing, legislative updates. We're going to start with our federal partners. Now, Courtney, did you want to kick it off or do we turn it straight over to Mark?
I would like to turn it straight over to Mark.
Great. Mark, you're up.
Hello, everyone. Nice to be here. We have been over the last few weeks trying to work to get everything lined up for the City of Salem's congressionally directed spending or community initiated projects, or earmarks as they used to be called, what the city will be going after on that. We have a deadline at the end of the month for our two senators to submit projects. So with Courtney and city staff, we've been doing some preliminary meetings with your delegation staff and have been kind of running different ideas for projects by them to try and come up with kind of our final list on what the city will be working on. So we're moving towards getting that finalized, and I think we have some good projects, and we'll have some good projects with a good chance of success here in the coming year. So we're things I think are going well, and we're on track for a good successful start to the year.
Excellent. Is there anything else on the federal side we need to talk about?
I don't think so. The only other thing I'll mention is there's real progress being made on the budget side of things with actually getting something finalized. There are top line numbers for the appropriators to work on writing a bill, and there's bipartisan optimism on the committee on both the House and the Senate side that they can write bills from the numbers they've been given, which is good because it means we'll hopefully be funding the government, which means they can work as it's supposed to. It'll allow a lot of the agencies to fully open up their grant programs, which is good. And it also means that the city's active earmark for $850,000 for the Salem Airport should be in that final bill as well. So we can start accessing that. So you can, continue making improvements out at the airport.
Excellent. Thank you. And thank you for all of your work on our behalf back in DC. I think we've had some great success recently that we haven't had in the past. And so thank you so much for your efforts.
Absolutely.
I'll also just mention that the committee directed staff to submit the CABIT, and I'm not going to be able to unpack that acronym, Coalition Against Bigger Corruption.
Yes.
And we did get our testimony in on that issue. So I just want to make sure everyone knows that we did close that loop. Thank you.
Great.
And then we have several active grant applications, including one for River Road. And with the slide, it becomes more relevant again. And so we're preparing testimony to support our grant application for that as well. And Summit's helping us get that into the right place.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks, Mark, Kat, and Terry. We appreciate all of your work on our behalf.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Keith.
Real briefly in regards to River Road, obviously it opened up yesterday. Looks like we're going to end up spending somewhere just shy of $100,000 on the latest event.
That's exactly the way I did enough as well.
100,000. Did you hear that, Mark? Great. Okay.
Yeah, and that's all useful things, because even though our application is into DOT for that project, you can often add kind of additional information and stuff like that, which they'll put in there. So, I mean, we're talking about how it's a risk of slides, and it's always how to go. And then actually we closed it for X number of days because of slides just now, and that's emphasizes why you all need the money and why it should be a priority.
For sure, this is
Can I
not,
jump in really
this is not a theoretical conversation, it's not a what if, it's an ongoing active problem that we're trying to manage, and it's really costing us lots of money and at a cost to a lot of other projects that we can't do when we have to divert money to keep repairing this slide, so.
Do we keep a running total of how many days it's been closed over the last 10 years, how much money?
We have that in the initial pitch for this project, and so we can easily repurpose that. Kat, did you want to jump in?
I was just gonna say Terry's been in the waiting room trying to get into the Zoom call.
Oh, he's not showing up in our waiting room, it says no response and nobody's in the waiting room right now.
Interesting. I will let him know and try to
Yeah,
send
sorry
him the
about that.
link
Look at the
again.
screen right now, there's nobody in the waiting room,
Okay.
sorry.
So we have all that documentation. We have really useful pictures that they're not great because it doesn't feel good, but they're useful pictures to articulate what it looks like when a large rock falls in. Yeah, so we have all of that.
Now he's in the waiting room.
So I wanted to make sure that everyone knew where we were on those.
For sure.
That was my big question, so
Great.
answered.
All right, thank you. We will then move on to Justin from Perseverance.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, staff, good to see everybody. Real quick, I'm gonna talk about the upcoming session, which is a big deal here in a couple days. Specific meetings I had last week, some specific legislation, and then finally an eye towards 2025. So with that, as everybody knows, we're in a 35-day legislative cycle, super compressed. Important to have things handled before you even come in that building. We saw a big decision out of the Supreme Court yesterday that essentially said you have to show up, right? So that interpretation. So a lot of people have been saying, well, does that mean people show up or do they not show up? So what we are hearing, the three members that did not walk out are Senator Girard, who was excused because of medical reasons, Brock Smith from down South Coast, and then Senator Anderson from over on the coast, who's in a very swing district and is up for election next time. If those three show up, then that gives the chamber a quorum. So we expect them to be in there. Once you have a quorum, why other senators would stay away doesn't make much sense. Now, again, this is me speculating, but I would imagine that they would come in, see what kind of projects are on the table, see what kind of things they could get out of the legislature to then come back, bring some things home to their own districts. So I am expecting the Senate to show up. But again, we will see. I mean, we've seen the last 5 sessions where there has been sort of some sort of walkout. So with that, that's what we go into the session for. We are working on some things, as everybody knows, to get some more funding. The governor said quite publicly and has told us privately as well that she is working to get us some resources, knowing the situation that we're in. So that's good news. So we've been working on that. We've got some irons in the fire. So I met last week with the governor's office with their ledge director, then met with both co-chairs of Ways and Means on the Senate side and the House side, met with leadership, both the majority leader on the House side, who is probably going to become the next Speaker of the House. Don't want to jinx it. And then also meeting with the majority leader on the Senate side, Senator Lieber, and just had meetings talking about what we provide to the state capitol, what we do in terms of being a capital city, and how we need these funds. So all those meetings have been going on. Things are looking good. I'm optimistic going into this next session.
Can I just add to that, just sort of from my perspective? I think we're kind of going down multiple tracks. So just know that we're going down multiple tracks. There's lots of conversations, all headed toward trying to get us more support. So.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And we are working on that. As the mayor mentioned, there are specific bills coming up. Everybody got their packets. Thanks for diving into that. We will do our best in the next few days to kind of clear the table and say, hey, you don't really need to focus on this. Here's what we should be focusing on, specific measures, even though it's quite a bill packet. We've got some bills around payment in lieu of taxes, which was introduced by Representative Anderson. We will keep an eye on that. We've got other bills dealing with housing, homelessness. Obviously, we're part of that with our sheltering efforts and hope that that package also benefits what we offer in and around our community. And then, Yeah, we'll go from there. The governor's got a big housing package. I know Eunice has been keeping an eye on that, and we're keeping an eye on what's going on there, and we'll wait to see what does come of that.
Yeah, if I could just add some commentary on that bill as well. It appears that the staff has really analyzed that bill, and it looks like maybe the most interesting parts of that bill won't actually apply to the city. It looks like we won't actually be impacted by it. So we're just monitoring it at this point, but it looks like it actually won't apply to us. So in case people ask you about that, it looks like it won't apply to the city of Salem based on the criteria that are listed in the bill currently. We won't meet that criteria. So any change to our UGB or potential change to our UGB won't even be part of the conversation because we don't qualify.
I wonder too, if we just may remember the short session is it creates crazy pacemaking. And so if you do have questions come to you about the city's position on any bill and it's not coming to you top of mind, do ask, because we have a whole software system that's tracking bills, and staff are entering city positions based on the policy statements and conversation here. So I have access to all of that really fast. So just do reach out if you are asked a question. There's often, we make a lot of more pragmatic decisions about which things we want to weigh in on and which we may not want to. So that backstory is all as well if you are asked to make an opinion.
And there's a lot of activity around that bill. There's other interests that, are really opposed to that bill. There's others that the governor's been working with over the course of the last, since the interim. And that will be very complex. You'll hear a lot about that bill coming up. You'll also hear about Measure 110 and some of the impacts. And I'm hearing a lot of buzz around, okay, how are the chambers going to work with each other across the aisle to really put some sideboards on Measure 110. This oftentimes happens with ballot measures, right? It takes a little time and it takes a few legislative cycles to get it to where it's right and to where it's working. Hopefully with the goal and objective in mind to get people help and to help our communities within those aspects. So
just for the purpose of my notes, there's a lot of buzz around Measure 110.
yes.
Got it.
Okay.
So, and our position is basically, we're not getting into the weeds on 110. We are simply supporting reform efforts.
Great. Okay, and then finally, what we do see here, again, so it doesn't feel like an exercise in futility for our staff. Everything we see here probably has the potential to resurface in 2025, right? So we use it as a little bit of a framework going into how we prep our legislative agenda and how we look at measures that'll probably be coming in the long session in 2025. So even though a lot of these things are throwaway, or I might say to you, hey, this probably isn't going to fly, just expect to see it again. So it doesn't hurt to do a little of the back work.
And it turns out that's just 12 short months away.
Is that it? I'm just geared towards the next 35 days.
Along that line, just if the committee's ever taken a position on a bill, we also staff have access to that as well. So there's a lot of repeat, to your point, ideas, and we can go back and pull those statements in of support or opposition as well to feed more conversation next week and the week after and the week after. The only thing we didn't quite talk about is Wes, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
That's the commuter rail bill. It's a study bill again. It is getting a hearing. I got a call from the mayor of Woodburn yesterday or sometime recently asking me to testify. So I will be part of a series of panels testifying on that bill coming up in the next couple of weeks. So there is some energy behind that. It looks like it did get a hearing, so that's a good sign.
Can I ask an question? So we were at a meeting last night with Salem Kaiser Public Schools. I know that they are their own thing and doing their own thing, but I also know that we want to support each other. Do we track anything that would impact education, especially Salem Kaiser Public Schools? And from a supportive viewpoint, does that make any sense?
We don't do that today. And I think we appear open if Salem Kaiser had a request for support, they would make one to us and we would do that, but right at this minute, we're not tracking all the education related. It's outside of the, we have lovely expertise, but not in that field.
Yes.
So, so I could follow up with Salem Kaiser directly and make sure that they're aware that we're able to.
And specifically, you're referring to like funding.
Yes,
So-
we were out of funding.
Yeah.
You wanna talk about?
Yeah, a lot of times those are how that, and we don't put the city machine behind that kind of effort. But it could be like on an individual elected official basis to support an effort. They're looking, they have the same issue that we have, obviously, we're kind of tied at the hip that way because they're the capital school district, second largest school district, we're the capital city, second largest city. A lot of similar themes. They're looking mostly at the just the education funding mechanism, which is really totally separate from us. We can be supportive of their efforts, but not like, we're not gonna put the city machine behind it at this point. Now, at some point, we may decide that we want to do that. But at this point, it's not part of our priorities. We don't have a council approved priority to do that, but always individual elected officials can do what they choose. We just need to remember that there is a pot of money in that building and we are all vying for it, and we don't want to be vying for it over here while we're vying for it over here, because it's just one set of legislators that have to divvy that up. And so we just need to be really strategic about how we get involved. So. That's your question.
Yeah, I know that we're tied at the hip. And I
Yeah.
also know that like the asks that are going to create the real change for both of us are huge.
Sure.
And we should be a united front in making that ask. I know that that's like a long-term plan. But I wanna be a good partner.
I do as well.
Great, that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
All right, well, thank you. I see we have housing and homelessness and then local revenue options as discussion points.
I think we covered
I
those.
feel like we did too.
I know that those two things were of interest, as well as the Measure 110 reform, which I think we took care of in policy statements that were approved by council most recently. So I think we're in a good position. I just wanted to keep these ideas at top of mind as we progress through the next few weeks.
I know it's not exactly called out on the agenda, but I would like to just go around to each one of these amazing staff members and just hear from them. I know they each have a list of bills that they're working on. If there's like one or two that really is kind of piqued your interest, or do you think that we ought to know about or pay attention to, or might be noteworthy? Would that be okay?
That's fine. You could maybe even just talk about something that you're intrigued by, but you don't have all your, all the information lined up.
Yeah, you don't need like, it doesn't, I'm not asking for your expert analysis or whatever, but just like, hey, this is something you might want to pay attention
For
to.
example, I'm aware that there's a PFAS bill. I'm curious about it, but I haven't read through
Yeah.
all of it. And so I look forward to doing that
Yeah.
and reporting next week.
Okay, thank you.
And maybe I'm gonna lean on Jason. So
Similar to what was introduced last year. So it's basically a study. PFAS and biosolids.
So basically doing space and keeping track,
Okay,
that's a big thing.
do we want to just kind of go down the line? Maybe we'll just start here.
Hey, Brian.
Right.
Next to the teacher.
That's what it said.
So I only have one bill that's been, that's on my queue, something about, battery storage for, renewable energy. I actually, funded that to Juliana, our climate action plan coordinator. So she wrote up, some information on that this morning. I need to read through that. But I end up getting it routed through Public Works since she's on that side of the house. So
Okay,
that's the only thing that.
okay, thanks. Scott, do you have anything?
Recreational immunity.
Yeah.
Is really important, the law that we have around that it's been challenged a few years ago, and then it was rewritten, and now we're kind of back where it got some legal holes punched in it again, so I think that's really important. And then just anything around the homelessness issue is
Of course.
of course important.
Justin, are you hearing anything on that recreational immunity bill?
I haven't, but I haven't been in that building yet, so.
Okay, thanks. Jason, do you have anything else you joined out?
Eunice and I are both tracking an SDC bill right now.
Can you want to tell us more?
Yeah.
I'm assuming they want to raise the SDCs? No, probably not. They want to take.
Housing related, so it has to do with municipalities deferring SDCs for developers, right? So
Yeah.
essentially it gives them an extra pot of money to work with when they're putting those housing pieces together. And the state or the bill, I think it's House Bill 4099, is proposing to set aside a pot of money that the state would then in turn buy that debt from. So. Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
Apparently that's popular. Wow.
I'm sorry.
What? What do you mean, what?
Sorry, I was asking because I got the same bill and I was gonna ask you if you were gonna cover it. So
Oh, yeah, so it's interesting, right? So we would defer the assessment, the state would then buy that or that deferment from us. So the money then is has to come back to us as SDCs and used only as SDCs can. But then it puts the responsibility on the state then to collect that money from the developers. And so the idea is that you start with a pot of money, you lend that money out, but you put that money out to the cities. And then the state then recoups that money, so then they have, it's a cycle, then they have more money to buy those deferment debts from cities. And they can kind of keep that machine going.
Okay.
And it takes a lot off of us because it puts the Department of Revenue behind collection, which is collection efforts from the city to try to deferment assessments.
Interesting. Okay.
Can I just ask, so they would be collecting it from the developers? You mean all developers or the specific developer that's?
Right, so if we choose to do an SDC deferment, we would have the opportunity then to sell that deferred amount to the state. The state would buy it,
Okay,
send us a check,
okay.
and then
It's
they're
not-
responsible then for going after the individual developer who received that SDC deferment.
I'm not always great at reading body language, but our financial officer right now he's got some interesting situation going. I've seen a new line that has never been there before.
I'm not looking that way.
Yes, it's.
This is all the back that we haven't yet done. The bills dropped late, Wednesday.
we just started getting it
Whatever.
yesterday.
The point is,
30 p.m.
we prefer to do all of this inner working stuff. They get our.
Excited,
Yeah.
don't we?
Yeah, we don't need to get into the weight on all of it. We just want to hear the highlights.
You can also see that the subject matter expertise relies on, because it impacts so many other areas, it relies
Right.
on this whole brain trust to come up with a representative position for the city to consider adopting.
Sure.
And so you'll just see that there, in addition to Joss's forehead, there will be a lot of other attention across the bench. So this is great.
This is perfect way to say the mayor's making the staff nuts by asking them to think out loud.
Excited, but realize, okay.
We tamp it down
Yeah.
over here.
Simmer down, you two.
Okay, got it.
What do you got, Josh?
In addition to the payment in lieu of taxes bill, there's another one, HJR 201, which is a statewide public safety levy initiative. So
Rep Evans.
Rep Evans, 25 cents per thousand across the state to fund public safety. So kind of an interesting concept. We heard about it a while back.
Yeah.
So something we'll be watching.
All right, thank you.
We have a couple paid leave, Oregon, protected leave bills that amendments or changes. And then also one that may have financial implication for the city with regard to telecommunicators receiving the same PERS benefit as our public safety. And so, about 50 of those employees. So
It would make 911 dispatchers essentially a police and fire as well.
Correct.
Yeah.
So.
Gotcha.
I have nothing to add on top of Scott and Jason's updates already.
Okay, thank you. Julie?
Lucky you.
There's one that I just read the title. It's to establish a task force on electric micromobility. And so I need to.
That's scooters?
That could be
What's that mean?
scooters, well, it's
Scooters, like that.
No, I mean, those things that break shoulders?
it could be scooters or e-bikes and or hoverboards or things that you haven't invented.
Other things that
that.
break shoulders, got it.
Yes, the backpacks that, you know, you just sort of jetpacks.
Nice.
What do you call the wheel ones?
I call them a hoverboard, but I don't know what they're actually called.
Like they call
I
it.
saw them out in the snow, going in the ice and stuff, it's crazy.
So anyway, it's just that, I mean, I say it's just, I mean, the bill is establishing a task force. I'm curious just to look and see, just because,
Why we need a task force on that.
yeah, is it like trying to get some statewide regulations that would, you know, we would support or not support? So, I'll look into it.
Cool.
We need to put up traffic, speed signs.
Yes, and speed humps for them.
Julie, can you get with Courtney? I sent Courtney okay, great.
We're looking for it.
Okay.
I'll follow.
Legal.
Legal, we care about everything you've already heard. And additionally, multiple bills requiring studies by various agencies on public records and public meetings law, which I'm sure comes as no surprise because that's always a thing in every legislative session. So either the next legislative session or I would imagine it's probably going to be the 26th session based on when the reports are due. We'll probably see a flurry of bills on tweaks on public records and public meetings law. We've also got some bills in this session with changes to elections laws. Move those over to Dan. So he's looking at those. And then the other thing that came into my inbox that Dan is taking a look at is a bill dealing with prohibiting gender reassignment surgeries for minors, but it had some stuff about public bodies and their role, what they could do, and things like that. So,
I know what you're saying that.
right, but he's taking a look at that as to whether or not there's anything the city should be concerned about being in position on. So that's in the.
Thank you.
The next layer of analysis is whether the bill might have any traction. And that part, you're just getting the first level. So-
We understand.
Okay, great. And it's also really.
That bill's not
impressive.
going anywhere, is what you're saying.
Maybe, but I also just want to acknowledge that it's super impressive to me because I started seeing the bills hit my email box around 2-ish. I don't know if that's right, yesterday. And all of this work has taken place, even though their regular jobs are all crazy. So I'm just really impressed with the amount of, I was nervous, but now I'm not. Sarah?
So I've only gotten to like half my bills, but we do have one to extend the sunset on the industrial site readiness program through the state. Technically, the program actually already expired because of the walkout, and there's funding assigned with that. So that neatly fits within our legislative priorities that we've already adopted. But that's a good bill to see going forward. We're also seeing a lot so far of bills where they're tucking in funding mechanisms for infrastructure if it's tied to not only housing, but projects or developments that would support housing. So it could be the water, the stormwater, you know, all the infrastructure along with site cleanup and grading. And so that's been stuck in a handful of different bills so far. So that's definitely something that we're tracking, because anywhere that we might be able to find some infrastructure funds to partner with some of these housing projects would be great, especially if they're grant versus loans. So those are some other things that we're seeing and tracking right now.
Hey, Jason, that might be directly related to the testimony you gave off session. Thank you.
Yay.
Sorry, question?
Yeah.
The first one you were talking about?
Yeah, industrial site.
Yeah, could you just remind me what that is?
So industrial site readiness, it's basically getting a site market ready.
Okay.
So Mill Creek is a great example of that, where we have all this land, but we don't have the infrastructure in place for anyone to develop, whether it's the roads, whether it's, you know, the water, the sewer, things like that. And it's so expensive for developers to come in and develop. We try to put together incentive programs. We've used urban renewal, but the state has always had this industrial site readiness program where you should be able to apply and get funds from the state that could go towards these types of projects that would then bring in these larger developers that would then be able to partner funding wise. So it's just another tool where we can leverage sort of development.
Thank you.
But you said that due to the walkouts, that funding didn't come forward.
So that particular program has never actually gotten funded. We've been able to use some other funds that the state has, but that program, we keep asking for funds to specifically go in it. And so this bill would do both. So it would extend the program as it should have been in last session, and then they're also trying to actually get funds finally assigned with it, rather than competing with some of the larger industrial programs that the state offers.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yes.
Largely just tracking the governor's bill. There's many components of it that are in other bills as well that are related to land use process, funding, et cetera. So all things housing and land use.
Yeah, this is probably the time.
I have other things. I'll just mention that there are about 9 or 10 bills that deal with some aspect of study or analysis of how existing or current or future behavioral health, addiction treatment, support services kinds of programs are working or could be working better or something. So it's a lot of those aspects. I probably on the other side of Measure 110, like how is that really working?
Right.
And then there's PFAS pilot. We already talked about pilot, and there's one more that I won't recall right now, but Trevor has many.
Yeah.
Trevor, many.
One of those TREV names. Yeah.
Many.
Should we just call them TRV?
So looks like what's dropped in my inbox
50th birthday, sorry.
is about 10 that are related to ballot measure 110, either studies or kind of battling bills to varying degrees of how granular they want to be. Some of them are going to have programmatic changes like diversion programs that I'm not sure how that would be funded, or tying it to forcing the counties to have probation for certain property offenses that they don't currently do. So how to fund probation would be difficult for that. And then a couple of really interesting ones that dropped were changing the definition, or at least kind of the definition on danger to self or others, and that time frame when looking at civil commitments. And so
Is that Rip Anderson's bill?
it might be.
Okay.
We haven't had.
I didn't know there's more than one. Okay.
Uh,
It's fine. I can find it later.
Yeah, but essentially that says that if they're gonna be a danger to themselves or others for the next 30 days, so kind of predicting out. And then getting them into treatment there, so that's a kind of a big change for civil commit. And then also one that would change from may to shall for police coming into contact with incapacitated people who have were under the influence of your drunk or other intoxicants, which is also forcing people to either sobering centers or treatment facilities. That's kind of not very well defined, or where we could actually take people. And so, as you know, when you tack a shall onto that, and
We're driving to Portland, what are we doing?
good question. So, yeah, our vehicle fuel bills might go up.
Yeah.
Or Salem Health will be really, really upset, because that's pretty much the only place we'd be able to take somebody for that. So that one's interesting, but yeah, they're kind of coming at all related issues as well. So, but what I'm looking for is all the ballot measure 110s, which ones are gonna kind of rise to the top, and then any of the changes for mental health related bills.
Is there a photo radar fix bill, or is there one needed? Did I read somewhere that there's one needed?
That hasn't dropped, I don't know. I thought that pretty much got taken care of last.
I did as well, but then I heard that there was a fix that had to happen.
Our need, the perennial Salem event did get fixed.
Yes,
But
but I understood that there was like a technical fix that needed to happen.
I haven't heard
Okay.
yet.
I had heard that too, but I think we're okay.
Yeah, and maybe the last one had some there was some language coming about school buses and school zones that might have been passed, that might have been that one. Oh, it's.
We'll find out next time, I'm sure. We've had a chance to really dive in.
Yeah, and I think it's for us, everything seems to be fine, and don't see any glitches that would affect what we do.
Okay.
So.
The one I forgot that is about a body to plan for the 250th birthday.
Yeah. The state's gonna, it turns out it's having a birthday party soon. So, yeah, cool.
All going to have to learn another multi-syllabic word.
Not sesquicentennial.
Sesquicentennial?
It's not, it's a
Because
semi.
it's not 250.
The word starts with semi.
Yeah,
It's
not
sort of-
even a five, that's-
Semi-
It's for the country, right?
Probably.
No, there's
Not
the
state. The state,
1850.
1859, so what would that be, 255?
It's,
We haven't met it.
Yeah.
I just saw that it was a body to study.
The Emmy sesquicentennial.
I think the 250th
Anyway.
anniversary of forming of the United States is in 2026.
Yes,
And that's what it.
so there's that, and then there's also the state. Thing. I was contacted by people who want to do a parade.
But
Um,
that's sooner.
yes,
Next year.
yeah,
That's
So-
25.
so anyway.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. We'll figure out those.
1770
Those
something.
are important things.
Something happened on July 4th.
Yeah.
It's weird to think that we're going to another anniversary of the nation's founding when I very specifically recall the one in 76. I mean, it was like,
Red, white, and blue.
yeah, for sure. It was like a whole year of stuff.
So you can tell we're working really hard. We're not quite where we want to be, and we will be next week when we regroup.
Thank you, and thank you for indulging me by letting me putting you on the spot. I know that isn't always comfortable, but y'all did great. So thank you. That's exactly what I was looking for, just like your initial impressions. So.
And you got our.
Yeah. We know what you're excited.
Yeah.
Is there anything else we need to talk about? Thank you to our friends in DC. We appreciate all of your work on our behalf. You're doing great things. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. And thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time. We're adjourned.